Now, the Law Society of Kenya elections are about to happen, and every time there's an election for the Law Society, there's a lot of buzz. Very many words coming in. The young lawyers, the older lawyers, the experienced lawyers, I don't know what. And then there's the regional balance, and all those things come up, and then there are now slogans that start coming. Remember the one for the former president?
What was it?
A brave new bar.
Brave new bar. I was going to say Lazima work. And I was mixing places. Sorry.
Yeah. So, but what's happening in the legal profession? That's what we want to discuss. But also look at the state of in our country when you talk about the rule of law. This barrage of attacks and spotlight being shown on the judiciary and all. Where are we at? We're joined by lawyer Kipkoech. He's a human rights, natural resources, and land lawyer. Good morning.
Good morning to you, Latif, Ndu, and Muga, as well as the listeners and viewers of Spice and KTN.
Happy New Year, brother.
Happy New Year, and happy to be here.
Yeah.
You people are doing extremely well. I'm sure that you have so many people following within the country and across the globe. It's really nice to be here.
Karibu. What's the color of that tie?
You know what? What I'm going to say is going to make you laugh. So be ready. It's salmon. I told you.
Yeah, did you know that?
No, I did not know. I actually have a problem with colors.
Not just you.
To the point where I sometimes think that purple, violet, and pink are the same color.
Yeah.
And lilac.
Yeah, like this, I thought this was electric pink.
But at least you tried with an adjective. Electric pink. Oh my God. This is the guy you need to call when you say, what theme do we pick? Hold on.
Electric pink.
Salmon, actually, yeah, salmon.
This is salmon.
That's what I was waiting.
In the salmon. Because salmon is this color, actually.
It is.
Sawa. Wakili, to welcome you to the conversation, now that you're a natural resources lawyer, let's talk about a natural resource called water. What does Keringet mean?
Well, Keringet, from where I sit, is a brand. It is a brand of mineral water. Also, it is said in commercial aspects that this is mineral water. This is water that has been purified, and its source is somewhere around Nakuru, somewhere around Kuresoi South. This is bottled water that is being sold in this country, and its source is somewhere in Kuresoi South. Keringet is also a town within Kuresoi South in Nakuru County.
Sasa does it mean hole? Does it mean a gaping hole? Does it mean a fountain? Does it mean a source of water? In any of the Kalenjin dialects?
Keringet, depending on how you pronounce it, may also mean a hole. It is Keringet. When you pronounce the way Kipkoech people from Nakuru pronounce it, Keringet. Some people also pronounce it as Keringet, which is a place, and this is a small town within Kuresoi South in Nakuru County.
Yes. This man knows Keringet, knows the water, and knows why we say, own your richness. City. The day's proverb, Tafadhali?
Yes. Proverbs for the whole of this week are from the Republic of Namibia. He who runs after good fortune runs away from peace.
He who runs after good fortune runs away from peace. What's the interpretation of it?
Well, I think it's a pregnant proverb, which, when you look at it deeply and you look at it for the literal sense, for the literal meaning, it means if you got to get something, if you got to get some benefit, you got to come out guns blazing, firing from all cylinders. You got to fight out. Nobody ever gave anybody anything on a silver platter. To be able to add something on your net worth, to be able to grab something additionally onto your CV, you got to go out there and fight for it. That is what it means. It is a struggle after a struggle, and the terrain is not as smooth. The terrain is not flat. It is it's quite a challenging terrain to be able to get anything that is additional, that is beneficial, that is going to add onto your achievements.
So you've got to be ready to go through that struggle.
There are not two ways about it.
And you'll have to abandon some elements of peace.
It is a struggle. A struggle knows very little peace. You got to break your sweat. You got to toil it. You got you got to fight a few people. You got to fight a few challenges. It is it is not easy. It will not be easy. It is a big fight.
Now, for the upcoming LSK election, are you putting yourself out as a candidate?
Yes, Latif Ndu and my good friend Muga. Yesterday evening we had a debate at Royal Media Services Citizen TV. We are 5 of us contesting for this position, and I think from where I sit, I am a front runner. I'm a foremost front runner. I'm not just a candidate, but I consider myself a foremost front runner.
For which seat?
For the position of President of the Law Society of Kenya, 2024-2026. And the elections shall be conducted on the 29th of February, 2024. It's about 3 weeks away. The Council of the Law Society of Kenya is the topmost organ of the society after the general meeting. This is the organ that governs the society. It has 13 members. You have the president and the vice president, general members, up-country representatives, Nairobi representative, and one lawyer who represents senior lawyers, the senior bar, the lawyers who are above 25 years in practice. So we shall be electing 13 council members. The president of the Law Society of Kenya is one of them, and the president of the Law Society is a leader of leaders. That is a person who leads the council. This is a person who chairs general meetings. This is a person also who reaches out to the branches, to the chapters, and to the practice centers whenever there are issues that involve the Law Society of Kenya. He is also, or she is also, for purposes of Article 27 of the Constitution, the spokesperson of the Law Society of Kenya. When the president has spoken, you cannot countermand the president publicly, no matter who you are within the ranks of the Law Society of Kenya, unless through a general meeting or a council meeting of the Law Society, which then can reverse the decision of the president spoken.
Okay. So I have 2 questions. And the first one will then probably give reason as to why the second one is being asked. So what does the Law Society of Kenya do? When we look at the country as a whole and asking ourselves again, what is the role of the LSK? Oftentimes we see it being thrown about. Something happens, LSK throws a petition. Something happens and the LSK is, coming against it, is protesting. LSK has representation on quite a number of commissions. LSK has representation in some governance here and there. What is the overall role? And then why do you want to be president?
Thank you, Ndu, and viewers. The Law Society of Kenya may be said, arguably so, that it is the 5th arm or the 5th organ in the governance structure of the country. We have the executive, the judiciary, parliament, the 4th estate, which is the media, and the 5th organ, in my view, is the Law Society of Kenya. So much so that when you look at Section 4 of the Law Society of Kenya, it has been given the mandate to advise government on matters of legislation, on matters of public interest. It has also been given the responsibility, elephant responsibility, to ensure that there is rule of law and constitutionalism within the country. And that is why in every time there is a decision made by the executive, made by the legislature, made by the judiciary or any other public body, the Law Society of Kenya speaks to it. It is because of the mandate it has been given in Section 4 of the Law Society of Kenya to speak to matters of rule of law, to speak to matters of constitutionalism, and to advise government. You can imagine if you have the responsibility as a professional body to advise government. And severally, the Law Society of Kenya speaks out and advises the government not to take a certain direction. Like the Law Society of Kenya has been involved on the matter of chief administrative secretaries. The Law Society of Kenya has been involved on matters of the housing levy. It's actually housing tax. The Law Society of Kenya has been involved on several issues that governs to various appointments, like the time the president gazetted Kenya Meat Commission to be part of the Kenya Defence Forces, or it was put under the Kenya Defence Forces. So the Law Society of Kenya is a professional body that has statutory mandate to speak to matters of rule of law, constitutionalism, and to advise government. You can imagine that responsibility of advising government. Why then do I need to be president of the Law Society of Kenya? The reason why I'm running for the position of the president of the Law Society of Kenya may be explained in 3 ways. One, I am a fairly experienced practitioner and leader of the Law Society of Kenya. I have been a leader at the Law Society of Kenya Rift Valley branch for 5 years, 2 years as a chairperson. I have been a council member at the national office for 4 years, 2 years of which I was a treasurer. And during this period of time, I do not have a single audit query, and I have not done anything that has disparaged the members of the Law Society of Kenya. In other words, I am like this general, a 4-star general like General Ogola, who's risen through rank and file from the positions of a lieutenant colonel to being a captain to being a major. You go to a colonel, a brigadier, major general, lieutenant general, and a 4-star general like General Ogola, who is the Chief of Defense Forces today. I understand all the formations, I understand all the divisions, I understand all the battalions, and I know how to relate with the service commanders from the highest level to the lowest level.
You know
I know the Law Society. Yes, I know. From day one, I would be able to put the Law Society of Kenya on a solid foundation for the next 50 years. Some of my friends have never served the Law Society, even at the leadership level of a practice center. It would take them 2 years before they learn. They will not be able to fly the Law Society of Kenya, which is like a Boeing 737. That is the first answer I give you why I am running and why I am the best person for this position. Number 2, Latif and Ndu and Muga. For the last 10 years, this is my 16th year in practice, I have had a solid practice where I have engaged and challenged various government decisions as a petitioner or as a lawyer for the petitioner. In 2014, I argued the petition of Mumo Matemo against the AG and other parties on the meaning and on how to implement Chapter 6 of the Constitution. It's a leading decision today on Chapter 6, which unfortunately has not been fully implemented by successive governments. I have also been this lawyer who has fought National Transport and Safety Authority and the Inspector General of Police because of speed guns. I am sure Ndu occasionally travels to West Kenya. I also suspect Muga does travel to West Kenya. And if you're traveling from Nairobi through Nakuru to Eldoret, chances are you might be flagged down about 4 times for violating speed limits on the basis of a speed gun that you do not see. The same thing happened to me, and I decided to take the battle head-on as a lawyer and as a Kenyan citizen. And it was a big fight. It was a titanic fight. The police came for me. Eventually, I won because most of those speed guns were defective. They had nothing to show that I was traveling at 114 kilometers per hour.
Which period of time was this?
This should have been around 2014, 2016.
You should have known.
No. No, I am in agreement with him. Because just as you approach Gilgil, there was an occasion I was stopped, and I knew very well I was not doing the speed they were saying.
Correct.
And I challenged and I said,
Show me.
There's that black vehicle that you have just after Morendet, that one. That's where the speed gun is. Let's go back and see if I was speeding. They declined. They just told me to go to the police station and wait. Yes.
So when this happened to me, I demanded for a computer printout for the alleged 114 kilometer per hour speed against 100 kilometer per hour. It was not shown. They said, you are our killer, we've known you, we can talk it out. I told them, let me go. They said, no. you can't just go. I told them, take me to court. I went through the proceedings. The case was dismissed because there was no case. They had nothing. I subsequently sued for compensation and also demanded that we adopt best international practices where if there is a speed gun somewhere, you mark it and you make sure that the marking is so conspicuous, like it happens in several states, like in Singapore. The judge who had this petition was not convinced, but I am happy that about 10 years later, the Ministry of Transport has installed, last year, the Ministry of Transport has installed signs so conspicuous that there is a speed gun designated area around around Kimende. There is a speed gun designated area around various areas, and they have gone slow on these speed guns because the police thought that this was a supermarket to collect monies from motorists, and you can imagine how much money was lost by Kenyans.
But let me ask you, as you appeal in this case, there are countries where you will not find policemen parked in dark cars monitoring your speed
or hiding under bushes.
No. There is a gadget. There is a sign that warns you, and there's a gadget.
And it's mounted.
It will, it's there. There's no one manning it, but when you're next stopped, they will actually provide you the documentation and show you this is what you are doing, this is what was happening.
That is good. That is the good international practice that I was pushing for way back in around 2014, and I am happy that as you go down from Nairobi towards Naivasha, that is what is happening. They have now mounted gadgets which tell you, Muga, you are doing 70 kilometers per hour. There is nobody manning that. That is the direction we needed to take as a country, so that we ensure that the ease of doing business is made as simple and as easy as possible. But how many Kenyans lost their time? How many Kenyans lost money? So many people were dragged to court for 1 year, for 2 years, yet there was no case. I started this conversation, and I am very happy today that today we have those speed gun designated areas, and they are so conspicuously marked, and even you have a speed gun mounted on the road, showing you around Kimende just before you get to Naivasha that Latif, you are doing 60 kilometers, you are doing 70. This is a highway where you're supposed to do 100. That is that is one thing that I've done for the public.
There's something that, in fact, somebody just sent me a message. Chapter 6 of the Constitution, like you did, you went and took a case on Chapter 6 of the Constitution. It's one of those that we have said many times here, and many people have said, this is an aspect of the Constitution that was bastardized in Naivasha, bastardized by subsequent legislation in Parliament. As a Law Society of Kenya, if you were to become president, now that you have been on that road, what would you do to make sure that the desire of the Kenyan citizen when giving themselves a constitution on Chapter 6 ideals is actually brought to life?
Thank you, Latif, and I'm happy you noted that I argued the appeal in the case of Momo Matemo versus the Attorney General and other parties. And when we went to court, we took the position through the petitioner, Trusted Society of Human Rights Alliance, that there were several issues which were unanswered, which could not have allowed Momo Matemo then to take up the position of Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. I have also argued the case of Catherine Chepkulul versus Nurdin Haji, President William Ruto and others, arguing that on the basis of the performance of Nurdin Haji as DPP, he did not qualify to ascend to the position of Director General of National Intelligence Service. The case was dealt with by the court. I also wrote my LLD on Chapter 6 of the Constitution, and I want to say this if I'm elected as a President of the Republic of Kenya. The Constitution that we have is so robust. It is sufficient to deal with matters of integrity or lack of it. It's also sufficient to deal with matters of bad governance. It is also sufficient to provide the necessary direction. What is missing? What is missing is threefold. Number one, there is no political will in Kenya at the highest level to fight corruption. From the executive, from the legislature, from the judiciary, and public bodies like commissions, there is no political will to fight corruption, let alone reduce it. That is number one. And I think if we have to succeed in fighting corruption, my view is that the three aides, that is the President, the Chief Justice, the Speakers of National Assembly and Senate, got to sit down and agree that we have to fight corruption in principle, and subsequently we need to go into the next level, which is putting resources into the Judicial Service Commission, Parliamentary Service Commission, EACC, because these are the bodies that have a lot of power within the Constitution to stem this vice. That is corruption.
But Wakili, they'll tell you they've done that. A recent meeting in State House came out, and one of the things was that we resolve and we dedicate ourselves to fighting corruption and rooting out corruption in all arms of government and all aspects of government. We are actually putting in more money into the judiciary as part of fighting corruption. And this and the other. This we have heard before. And if you say it's about political goodwill, surely the day that politicians will have the goodwill to fight corruption, pigs will fly.
As I have told you, because I have been a player in this and I have litigated to various levels, I have mentioned to you the case of Nurdin Haji and Mumatema. Nurdin Haji, I argued last year before the High Court. Save for the talk, there is very little that is going to flow from the lips of those people who met at State House. That is why I said Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, as it were, is designed in terms of funding to fail. Look at the resources that you've given to Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. It cannot mount any serious fight. It cannot even sensitize Kenyans on why they should not give police money on the road, why they should not give land registrars 500 shillings or 1,000 shillings to get a land search, or why they should not buy government trucks in private pharmacies, in private chemists. Once they have seen that these trucks have the label Government of Kenya, they should just repossess them from all those chemists. You would need to do massive sensitization in this country. EACC doesn't have that capacity. Judicial Service Commission, which I interact with because I am prosecuting a number of judicial officers there. I say this, and I would invite anybody to challenge me. Can take 5 years to resolve a complaint. You mount a complaint, Mr. Muga, against a certain judicial officer, and there is no public pressure like in the case of Said Chitembwe. It takes them 2 years to deliver their decision after the conclusion of the hearing. A judicial officer with weighty complaints on his or her head would continue to hear cases. If he is accused of receiving bribes, if he is accused of incompetence, he would continue hearing those cases for 2 years, 3 years after the conclusion of the matter before him. I do not want to say more. I would not want to say much about Parliamentary Service Commission. I would just single out TSCC and the Judicial Service Commission. They have failed Kenyans. One, because of capacity, and number two, there is no will to fight the vice, which is corruption, and want of integrity. And as president of the Law Society of Kenya, if I am elected on the 29th of February, there are two things that I would want to do about corruption in this country. I tell people that corruption in this country is cooked and served hot at the executive. It is consumed in parliament, in the judiciary, and all these other levels.
Kitchen, the executive.
Yes, that is where the kitchen is. That is where planning, that is where plotting, that is where strategy is done through budgeting and assigning figures. If I'm elected as a president of the Law Society of Kenya, the first thing that I would do, because this is a monster now that is threatening all professionals, this is a monster that is threatening functioning institutions, I would want to have a task force chaired by a senior counsel, picked by the Council of the Law Society of Kenya, with participation from the membership and a number of members. We collect views across the country within 30 days on the most corrupt people with evidence. We will take this evidence to EACC, we will take this evidence to Judicial Service Commission, Parliamentary Service Commission, because Alati Vandu and Muga, in the last 1 year, they are cabinet secretaries, and everybody knows this, who have become overnight billionaires. The salary is known, but you can be shown that this person is owning this kind of assets. This person now has acquired this kind of house in Karen, is acquiring these parcels of land and fencing them in several parts of the country. The salary of a cabinet secretary is less than 2 million shillings. So within 2 years, you would expect such a person, assuming they are not using the 2 million shillings, you would expect it to be less than 48 million shillings. But shock on you. House worth over 100 million somewhere in Karen, several parcels of land outside Nairobi, and capital intensive assets. These are the people we want to collect this evidence as the Law Society of Kenya, with me as the president, and take to the relevant agencies.
So a task force.
Yes, we will have a task force. And provide material, because Kenyans see this material. Today, as we speak, Latif, we have a few people who are in government as members of parliament or state officers who walk around with tons of cash, 5 million shillings in cash, 10 million shillings in cash. Yet we have a legislation on proceeds of crime and anti-money laundering. They do not own factories. These people do not own farms. We do not know the farms that they are farming tea or planting maize, but you see them around with tons of cash of money, which clearly tells you that there is a lot of cartelism, that there is a lot of wash that is happening within the public sector.
Now, among the enablers of this vice are your members, lawyers. So what will you do to weed this profession of yours of these bad apples? Because if you talk about judges being bribed, and City keeps asking, who is this that has interaction with a judge, if not an officer of the court, aka an advocate? When these people are walking up and down with all these tons of cash and they're moving it from one bank to the other, who are among their advisors, if not advocates? When you have money that is sitting in an advocate client's account and it is not to be audited because it's a client's money. There's corruption within the legal profession in this country.
Thank you very much, Latif. As I said, and I want to speak the truth to power and to viewers, corruption in this country is systematic, it is planned, it is systemic, and it is endemic. Many people in this country as facilitators of crime. That is why I said at the national level, we shall have a task force. At the professional level of the Law Society of Kenya, we have the Advocates Disciplinary Committee, which has been able to deal with many issues around corruption, to deal with many issues of misappropriation, to deal with many issues around embezzlement of clients' funds. What I would do as a president of the Law Society of Kenya is to have a discussion with the Attorney General, to have a discussion with the chair of the Advocates Disciplinary Committee, on how much more we can resource this Advocates Disciplinary Committee so that it can deliver their decisions timely. The Law Society of Kenya is the only profession that is so merciless when it comes to its members. Unlike the other professions, and you would tell me how many people the Media Council has kicked out of the profession because of breaking the code of journalism. In the Law Society of Kenya, we strike out colleagues. In the Law Society of Kenya, on a daily basis, we suspend lawyers who have breached the LSK, who have breached the Advocates Act. We saw merciless on our colleagues. I thought sometimes we probably needed to have been a little bit fair. We needed to have been a little bit kind. But that is what we are. We have a panel in the Disciplinary Advocates Committee, Advocates Disciplinary Committee, which deals with these issues. What I would do as a president of the Law Society of Kenya, because I have sat there as a member, as an alternate member, is to resource it so that it's able to deliver its decisions timely, so that the public that is complaining, clients who are complaining, several people who have interest, should be able to get their decisions within a record time. But that is not sufficient, Latif. When you talk about corruption, when you talk about misappropriation, when you talk about bribery, it transcends misappropriation of clients' funds. It goes into taking money to judges, taking money to magistrates, facilitating corruption, an intricate web of sabotage in the justice system. Matters of corruption cannot just be dealt within the Advocates Disciplinary Committee. We want to lobby the executive, lobby parliament to give more resources to Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission so that it's able to investigate faster, get solid evidence, and have the office of the ODPP as well given capacity. And I want to say this. The Office of the Director of Public Prosecution in the last few years, around 10 years, has built its capacity. It's almost in every constituency. In fact, I am surprised that the AG's office, which is the advisor and which is senior in pecking and ranking, is not doing as well as the Office of the ODPP. What I think we needed to do is to continue this winning streak, build capacity of all state council, put more resources in these constituency offices, have more state council so that they prosecute as many cases as possible, synthesize evidence evidence given to them as much as possible and ensure that only the best of cases. And we prosecute sometimes, City Muga, we prosecute cases that are not going anywhere in this country. We've had a former CEO, Kipkoech, of National Hospital Insurance Fund. He is prosecuted for 10 years in our courts. After 10 years, the court tells him, sorry, there is no evidence against you. He's lost his job, he's lost his dignity, he's lost everything. Kenyans have also lost so much by having prosecutors, magistrates, having a EACC to prosecute him for 10 years for nothing.
It's interesting that you bring that up, because when we had that conversation earlier this morning, and I think I'm very interested in a body that would essentially interrogate some of these things. And there is a very long list. And that's why I asked initially what role the LSK plays, because some of the things that we see unfolding in the legal space in the country are quite baffling. For example, how is it possible that Auditor General or the control of budget will give such damning reports over time and interrogation does not follow? Questions are not being asked. Parliament, who has a role, then is not asking some of these questions. Would the LSK as a body have anything to do with that? Then again, you talk about the court comes and says, we have no evidence. Not the court, it's the office of the DPP who comes and says, we have no evidence. The court sits there as a referee. Judicial officers sit there as referees. But again, the people who are coming out and saying that we have no evidence or our witnesses don't have anything to say are seasoned lawyers. They are the ones who went to court. Right? So yes, we have people sitting there for 10 years wrapped around, or court cases wrapped around them, and then nothing happens. The office of the DPP brings cases to court and they have a list of witnesses. They abandon fiduciary responsibility in terms of what they're supposed to do over and over and over again. And we just look at it and then we say, okay, well, there's another fun day in the park, and then we move on. Who then would step in? Would the LSK have a place here where we can say, okay, guys, things are not going right. How about we fix this? Because if we sit and look, nobody else seems to be doing anything.
Can the DPP be taken to court as a person?
When you look at the provisions of Article 157 of the Constitution, it would appear that the Office of the Directorate of Public Prosecution is clothed with immunity. It's not supposed to operate under the direction and control of anybody, so that even if it made mistakes, even if it made errors of judgment, which are so obvious, Article 157 of the Constitution gives it the benefit of wisdom or lack of it. So it will get away with that lack of wisdom.
Let me ask the question again. Can the
individual office holder
be taken to court?
When I look at Article 1...
For performing the duty.
Well, if we take the simple rule that a layman like myself would understand that no one is above the law, then is he above the law if we cannot take him to court?
There is nobody in this republic who is above the law. The only person who cannot be prosecuted when in office or who cannot be sued when in office is the president of the republic. But immediately he or she hands over power, she is subjected to the rigors of the law, so that even the limitation period which applies in some cases does not run when that person is in office, and immediately is out of office, that happens. To come back to the question of Ndu, the Law Society of Kenya has been extremely voluble. It has spoken into several of these issues. I want to very quickly tell you where the problem is in this country. The problem starts from the voter. The voter elects a member of the county assembly who has no papers, but who is contesting on forged papers. Same thing to a few members of parliament. These members of parliament will vet the person who becomes the ODPP, the person who becomes the AG. You can imagine, you do not have any papers that are known or which can be recalled by any university, but you're vetting somebody to be the Chief Justice, you're vetting somebody to be the DPP or the AG. This person proceeds to occupy that office. What do you expect? The problem of incompetence and corruption in this country is systemic. Having said that, I think there is so much that we can do. And as a Law Society of Kenya, if I'm elected as a president and the president sits in the board of the Office of the Directorate of Public Prosecution, we need to build capacity of the Office of Directorate of Public Prosecution so that cases which go to court should be cases that have been scrutinized.
Excuse me.
Sure.
Build capacity, what do you mean? I mean, you have just said a few minutes ago that the office of the Deputy Director of Public Prosecution has expanded, and it's literally, the tentacles are all over the country. So this capacity that you speak of, what is it?
The capacity that I am talking about is infrastructural. The capacity that I am talking about is physical. We now need to get deeper. We now need to get down and ensure that the State Council are able to receive files from EACC, are able to receive files from the Directorate of Criminal Investigation in good time. There is synergy. There is so much fights that are happening between the office of the Director of Public Prosecution and the DCI, for example. There is no much collaboration. We need to build synergy between the two institutions. They interrogate these files. If a request is made for further investigation, this is done. This is the conversation as President of the Law Society of Kenya, who has a relationship in law with the office of the Director of Public Prosecution, would want to engage, so that there is so much synergy, there is so much collaboration, there is so much collegiality, so that only files with the potential to succeed are taken to court.
So, Akili,
Yes.
so we have a problem in this country.
Yes.
Collegiality is not always positive.
When I speak about collegiality, I am talking about evidence.
Oh, I understand what you're saying.
Yes.
And I even understand what you mean. But you see, we are assuming that corruption is the problem. In my mind, corruption is a symptom. The problem is impunity. Do you really think that corruption would be as widespread as it is if people knew they would be held to account? No. They know they can get away with it.
Correct. And correct. That is why I started by saying the biggest problem in this country is with the voter. The voter receives latives 200 shillings for a vote. This MCA, this member of parliament, this senator is the person who would be vetting so many people who would be occupying these offices. The less I say on what happens subsequently, the better. What we have, and somebody has said that elected leaders and those who are appointed by the elected leaders, those who are picked and vetted by elected leaders are as good as the voters. If the voter takes 200 shillings to vote, then this problem is going to be replicated across the board. And I agree with you on the aspect of impunity, because we've had Nuruddin Haji, who is now the Director General of Intelligence Service, admitting on public TV that on a number of occasions he was intimidated to prosecute people. And in the same vein, he was also coerced to withdraw cases even if there was evidence. This was a damning revelation on the institution of the office of the ODPP.
That is where now this question comes in, right? Can the Law Society of Kenya play a role in ensuring that there is accountability from the person who is occupying that office of Director of Public Prosecution while in office and even after office, and the institution itself? The Constitution you're quoting, it says the Director of Public Prosecutions, in exercising the powers conferred by the Constitution, shall have regard to the public interest, the interest of the administration of justice, and the need to prevent and avoid abuse of the legal process. Milimani Anti-Corruption Court Magistrate Eunice Nyutu yesterday put the DPP on the spot for what she said to be conduct reeking of negligence. This is what she said. She said the DPP called six witnesses in a case where Mike Sonko and 16 others were accused of a 357 million shillings corruption case. But she says those six witnesses could not support the case before bungling it. It is tragic, she said, that a prosecution can lose sight of a case. The conduct by prosecution in this case reeks of negligence of duty. After carefully considering the testimony of the six witnesses, the evidence adduced is inadequate to sustain the charges leveled against the accused persons. It's not the first time that this particular magistrate is saying the same thing about the prosecutor on corruption cases. She looks and sees the way you have conducted yourself in this particular case, you did not even apply yourself in the case. You brought a case to court, and after that, you were pushing for it to fail. You've brought me to this where I only have one conclusion to make. There is no case to answer. Not one, not two, not three cases. What should the LSK do to make sure that the Director of Public Prosecutions does not continue with this trend of neglect of duty?
Eric, may I chime in? There was the case of the former CS Finance. Was it Treasury?
Henry Rotich.
Yes, we had a situation. That one was unique, in as much as it was bizarre. The witnesses are there, and then the DPP who brought the witnesses declined to interrogate them. I mean, I've never heard of such a thing in my life. How do you explain such a thing? It is that reason that I was asking. Can he be taken to court? Because how do you explain that? You bring witness, you bring, and then you decline to. So, is that a travesty?
In my casual reading, I'd say there is disregard of public interests. There is ensuring that the interests of the administration of justice are not taken care of. And there is abuse of the legal process. Direct contravention of the Constitution.
I want to agree 100% with what Siti Muga says, what you Latif says. I also want to agree with the sentiments, the strong sentiments by Honorable Nyutu. And as I said earlier on, there is no political will. This is the same as saying impunity has permeated governance structures of this country at the highest level, and it pervades all institutions. What really is happening? I would give you my insider knowledge, because I defend these cases on a daily basis. A person is arrested in a case of high trauma. EACC invades your bedroom at the crack of dawn, or maybe in the middle of the night, when there is pin drop silence. Probably you're in the inner sanctum of your bedroom with people who are very close to you. You are not anticipating any arrest. You are arrested, as it has happened to so many people. You are flown to Nairobi by road in about 5 Subarus, driving at breakneck speed of 200 kilometers per hour, and they want to cycle Nairobi for about 30 minutes to confuse everybody who is looking for you. And then you are taken to court, you take plea, you're released on bond. Once you've released on bond, that is the end of the political interest in the matter. The ODPP gets the file, no witnesses are forthcoming, the investigating officer is not picking phone calls from the prosecutor who is prosecuting the matter. When you get a warrant of arrest against the investigating officer, it is said he's attending to a training somewhere in Israel. Subsequently, you're told he's attending an operation somewhere in Laikipia, and for 4 or 5 consecutive times, there's no investigating officer, there are no witnesses. What is the prosecution supposed to do? Try to look for this person, try to reach the bosses, plead with the court for adjournments. Most courts would indulge the prosecution, but you can only go so far. That is why I agree with Honorable Nyutu. There is no synergy between the DCI and the Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, because, as I've said, most of these cases, and it's good to say the truth, are politically instigated cases for purposes of achieving short ends and political ends. What should be the way forward? LSK needs to come out very strongly and speak to this issue, but that is not sufficient to speaking to this issue. I represented Catherine Chepkulul against Nurdin Haji and President William Ruto and the AG when he was promoted, when the former ODPP was promoted to the position of Director General of NIS.
Yes.
Do you know what the court said? The court said these issues you're raising about Chapter 6 of the Constitution on coercion and intimidation are issues that should have been dealt with by Parliament. If elected as a president, I will want to institutionalize public interest litigation. Yes, you can go to Kenya Law Reports. You will see the case of Catherine Chepkulul versus Nurdin Haji, President of the Republic of Kenya, and you would want to ask yourself whether really sometimes the judiciary understands its role. But that is it. There's so much you can do. There is a problem in this country by the judiciary, by the executive, by the legislature, in which they have refused completely to ensure that Chapter 6 of the Constitution is entrenched and public interest is protected. But there is a way forward. The future is very bright. When I become president of the Law Society of Kenya, I want to open up this conversation about Chapter 6 because I have published a thesis, I held an LLD thesis on the same. In South Africa, in a case involving almost the same office of the ODPP, the court said such actions of appointments of people who have questionable past can be interrogated abrogated by the court, not just by parliament. And actually an appointment of a director of public prosecution by president that time was quashed by the constitutional court after various courts had quashed the same. So there is a future, and if elected as a president of the Law Society of Kenya, I would want to shake most of these institutions on the basis of Section 4 and ensure that public interest and the rule of law is not just entrenched, but is seen to be entrenched, and Kenyan people benefit. We should stop taking people to court for the sake of it. We should not allow political expediency in constitutional offices.
And those who are given these high offices and high trust by the public and occupying an office that is safeguarded by the Constitution against abuse by others should then not allow themselves to be abused, just so they can be rewarded with a promotion later. Thank you very much for joining us, Wakili, and all the best in your quest to be president of the Law Society of Kenya. Kipkoech Ngetich is an advocate of the High Court. He's a human rights, natural resources, and land lawyer and candidate for president of LSK. Thank you for tuning in to Kenya's biggest conversation.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.